Hello, I'm Krystal and today I will be presenting to you a lesson that serves as an introductory lesson on fractions. The lesson I have developed is best fit for a heterogeneous group of third grade students who are learning in a blended learning environment. The objectives I have set for this lesson for the students are based on the Common Core Standard 3 NFA1. This standard is shown on your screen and basically states the students will be able to understand fractions are made up of equal parts. When you have all the equal parts, they make up a whole. The numerator represents how many pieces of the whole you have, and the denominator represents the total number of equal pieces in a whole. As we move through the presentation, I will continue to show the blueprint so you can see how the student is progressing through the lesson. All of the pieces of the lesson would be housed in a learning management system such as Blackboard or Moodle. You may have noticed in the graphic, there are 2 tracks of learning for day 2. The track of learning the student follows is solely dependent on individual performance of the pre-assessment. The pre-assessment is administered on day 1. Students would log into their LMS and see they have a pre-assessment to complete. This pre-assessment will cover unit fractions, vocabulary pertinent to fractions, problems involving whole fractions, as well as fractions of a whole. The pre-assessment was created using the software Edulastic. This program allows for instructors to create assessments, quizzes, or classwork and assign them to students. It also houses their responses for the instructor to grade and give immediate feedback. We are going to begin by following the Track 1 timeline. This is the track students would take if they did not demonstrate mastery in the pre-assessment. On the questions that meet this lesson's objectives. As you can see, I have developed a timeline for how long this lesson should take. I developed this timeline based on my current school's requirement of 80 minutes of daily math instruction. Many of the sections you see will depend on the learner's own pacing. However, I budgeted time on the high side so that students who need a few more minutes will have time to complete the lesson within the 80 instructional minutes provided. After the students take the pre-assessment and do not show mastery on the learning objectives set for this specific lesson, students will then complete a vocabulary introduction. This video begins with basic vocabulary when mathematicians talk about fractions such as whole, numerator, denominator, and fraction bar. The 2 graphics around arrow 1 are screen captures of what this looks like. After the vocabulary is front-loaded in the video, this site moves on to an interactive practice. Arrow 2 shows students must first choose the pizza below that is cut into the correct number of parts by looking at the fraction shown. This would demonstrate their understanding of the bottom number, the denominator, meaning the total number of pieces in a whole. Once a student makes a selection, follow arrow 3, the interactive video game tells the students they are correct and a recording plays and reiterates the significance of a denominator, thereby reinforcing the vocabulary instruction. Following arrows 4 and 5, you can see they repeat this process for other parts of the fraction. While this is interactive, it has several examples the student must work through, and this activity should only take about 10 minutes for them to complete. After students complete the vocabulary introduction, they would go back to their LMS and find the presentation, which is an animated video of instruction. This video is provided by BrainPop. The 2 characters go through a skit that helps students make the connections between fractions and real-world scenarios. They present the problem of having to split a sub-sandwich into equal pieces for the class. While working through this problem, the characters reinforce the vocabulary from the vocabulary introduction while providing students with additional vocabulary such as 1/2, 1/3, and whole. Another teaching point the video makes is fractions are equal parts to a whole, all of which are crucial to ensuring students meet the learning objectives I have set for this lesson and making the learning as authentic as possible. After students finish the BrainPop video, they would go back into their LMS and find the next task on their list is a learning objective related game. This is the last chance students have to practice their knowledge of fractions prior to completing the daily classwork assignment or quiz. This game is called Fractions Splat. Students would be instructed on the LMS to choose simple fractions too, and then timed slow for their practice. It is important students choose time so that they are monitored in how long they are spending on the game. Each time they play the game, they will get 60 seconds before the game is over. The graphic on the right shows how many shapes fill the page at 43 seconds. However, as the game progresses, more and more shapes fill the page, increasing the level of difficulty. In the LMS, I would include in my instructions students could choose to play up to 3 rounds in which they should try for a new high score each time, but require only a minimum of 1 round. This would allow for students who may be still struggling to get extra practice, while students who play once and feel confident in their ability could move on to the next portion of the lesson. After students completed Fraction Splat, they would gain access to the daily classwork assignment, which is the quiz, and is over the learning objectives set only for this lesson. On the student's LMS, they would see a quiz that would contain a hyperlink sending them to eduelastic.com. They would then complete the 7-question quiz I created over the day's learning objectives. This quiz is set up to release immediate feedback to the students. The target set for mastery is students must obtain a score of at least 70%. When students get their immediate feedback and they score less than 70%, they must complete 2 interactive reteaching activities. The first reteaching students have to complete is very basic. This activity keeps track of how many questions students get wrong and helps them correct their mistakes by giving them more than one opportunity to get each question correct. After students have completed this activity, they will move on to a second reteaching game. This game is a matching game, upping the difficulty from the first reteaching game. Students must match the fraction to the correct shape. Students would again be instructed on the LMS page to choose the timed mode for this activity. They would also be encouraged to play a minimum of 2 rounds with a maximum of 3 rounds. These activities reinforce the difference between a numerator and denominator, as well as the recognition of different shapes broken into different numbers of equal parts, which should help develop the students' understanding of fractions. After students whom did not originally achieve mastery on the quiz have completed the reteaching activities, they will have a second and final opportunity to retake the same quiz and show mastery. Students that earned mastery upon their first attempt at the quiz would not have to complete the reteaching activities and would have direct access to all of the games related to this learning objective. This would be an opportunity for them to reinforce and practice their understanding and even collaborate with other students who are in this phase of the learning period. Students who did not earn mastery on their first attempt would complete the reteaching activities, retake the quiz, and then have the same access as the other group of students. The games include Fraction Splat that all students played, the 2 reteaching games, and 1 additional game called Matching Cake Fractions. This game is an extension of the learning objectives and involves some higher order thinking. Students have to make predictions and estimate how many pieces of the cake are left when the cake is uncut. The baker also speaks to explain why they were correct in their predictions to again help reinforce the learning objectives set for this lesson. The other track students may take for day 2 of learning is what I call the alternate track or the alternative track. This is the track students would take if they showed understanding of basic fraction knowledge and the learning objectives set for this lesson. In this case, students would take the pre-assessment and then complete the vocabulary introduction. This is the same activity that was completed by the students following the other track. This activity is still necessary for the students in the alternate track to complete prior to the quiz because it helps to fill in any gaps in background knowledge or to clear up any misconceptions they may have about fractions. It also provides them with some practice which gives them formative feedback on how they will do on the summative assessment. Once students in the alternate track have completed the vocabulary introduction activity, they would gain access to the classwork assignment or quiz. Students in the alternate track completed the same quiz students in track 1 will complete. They too will have 2 opportunities to demonstrate mastery. Mastery is set at achieving at least 70%. If students do not show mastery upon their first attempt on the quiz, they will be redirected to the presentation or animated video of instruction. In the alternate track, students will only watch this animated video provided by BrainPop if they did not achieve mastery on their first attempt of the quiz. This is required after earning less than a 70% because it means instructional gaps still exist in their knowledge. After students in the alternate track watch the animated presentation, they will be required to complete 2 reteaching activities. Students will be directed to complete this activity under the same circumstances as the students who did not demonstrate mastery in track 1. They will complete the first game shown on the left of the screen and then have the opportunity to play the timed matching game on the right of the screen up to 3 times before continuing on. Once the students in the alternate track completes all of the reteaching activities, they will have access to all of the learning objective games. After students in the alternate track have demonstrated mastery on the classwork assignment or quiz, either on their first attempt or second, they will gain access to all of the games to practice their skills and reinforce the learning objectives set for this lesson. Again, this is a great time to encourage collaboration with students playing the same game to create conversation and discussion on the academic material, or an opportunity to create an in-class scoreboard so students may compete for the highest score of the individual games. After students complete this lesson, they should be ready to further their learning and experience with fractions and move on to new learning objectives. These are the references for the games shown during the presentation.